Go
All
ahead.
right, good evening, everyone. Looking back on the last few board meetings, as a student watching, there's just a lot of negativity and criticism directed at the board, the district. So I just kind of want to balance that with some positivity. With that being said, I want to thank you guys for staying strong up there. I know it's kind of hard with all that criticism being directed towards you, to stay up there very stoic, keep your cool. So I commend you guys for that. And I would also like to thank the librarians who have been going through that tedious book review process. That must be hard for them. I know at Dearborn High, they've been working hard to go through the books, any of them that have been flagged for any potential reasons. So I also want to commend them for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next
Next one.
card.
Is Fazal M. Al-Khaili. Would like to speak to the board in behalf of its behavior and collaboration.
I don't see Fies in here right now. So come back in case C just stepped out for a moment.
The next one is Kathy Martin from Dearborn Heights. She would like to speak to the board about bullying and racism.
Good evening. I have spoken before you before as an employee and as a concerned citizen, and I was really hoping that I could come and talk to you today as the newly elected union president, but I have to talk to you as a mother. My children have attended Dearborn schools since kindergarten, and being biracial, they have had to deal with things that other people have not had to deal with. I've tried to use the proper channels to address this. My son is now in 9th grade. He no longer attends Dearborn schools, but my daughter does. And again, this year, things have arisen, and I've tried to use the proper channels, and she has to report it, and she does. And I decided that I was going to let it lie until, see what happened. However, Friday, she gets in the car and says, "Mama, they're doing it again." My daughter is being called the N-word. My daughter has been told to get back on the bus. And on Friday, they were like, "Hey, have you solved that bus problem yet?" And it's too much. She goes to school to learn, not to be bullied. And I haven't seen any changes. And then I have to tell her, "Oh, go report it." So not only is she having to deal with this, she has to relive her trauma by going and reporting it. And it's not always handled in a very appropriate way. And I don't know what can be done to stop this, but I just need it to stop. I can't have my daughter coming home hearing these things being said about her. So I know the district is doing, DEI and all these things. It's not happening fast enough. Something needs to be done. And it's not just my daughter. I have reached out to other parents. Parents have been reaching out to me for a couple of years. And unfortunately, they don't want to speak. And I've tried to hold back on speaking, but I can't anymore. So I'm not just speaking about my daughter. I'm speaking about other students of color or, Black students in the district. So it's a problem at a lot of the schools, and please, please, please do something to make it stop.
Thank you.
Faiz Al-Khalhi.
You don't want to speak? All right.
Okay. Next, Ali would like to come to speak to the board about community projects from Dearborn.
Hello, good evening, trustees. My name is Salah Ali, Dearborn resident, byproduct of Dearborn Public Schools, as well as having 4 children in the district, 2 of which at Saline Elementary. So there's a few things that I'd like to discuss, but I am limited on time, so I'll try to go over them very quickly. One, regarding the fielding town halls that happened. I attended the Fortson one. President Thorpe, you were there. There was only 5 community members. Most of them were administrators and fielding employees, so very few people showed up. And honestly, as someone who was part of the VIP infrastructure team as well as the focus group, I was really hoping, at least at the town hall, that there would be some type of plan presented. And it seems after so long, several months, they keep soliciting feedback with no real fruits to that investigation or research. So I'm hoping that the board will try to get information from them, tangible information that shows what their plans are after all these research that they've done. I want to shift, in addition to, during that session, I also learned that there was October 2022 capital investments. There was about $99.5 million spent. And the inequities of that distribution of funds is just very apparent. About 60% went into West Side schools, and only 9% went to East Side schools, including the South End. Only $25,000 of capital investment went to Salina School in itself. So the inequities, we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion. I really want to focus on the equity portion and making sure that schools, marginalized schools, get the appropriated funds needed to fix their infrastructure as well. And then lastly, I want to talk about a community project that I introduced to the Salina District. On December 20th of last year, me and a colleague of mine from the Ecology Center went and visited Salina Elementary in hopes that we could use the schoolyard to collect rainwater for a research that we're doing to understand the PFAS contaminants in air or on land. And what started as a conversation with the principal, really just intrigued by the opportunity to have this done, led to a formal request to the district to allow us to collect rainwater, simply putting a bucket on the schoolyard to collect rainwater. That was back in December. It took up until January 30th to get a response. And the response, unfortunately, was a rejection and allowing us to put an empty bucket on a schoolyard, literally just to collect rainwater. Throughout that time, I have yet to understand the reasons why. They haven't explained to me why they won't allow us to put an empty bucket on a schoolyard. I know we got a few seconds, but I hope that you guys can look into the reasons why in allowing us and submitting that information, allowing to do the research. So I don't know if I can elaborate a bit more, but.
Time's up.
Okay.
But I've got it written down, and we'll talk about it when we're done.
Okay, thank you.
Next, Jackson Wagner from Dearborn would like to come to speak to the board about book bans.
So this month is Black History Month. Schools all over the country weave lessons about Black history into each school day throughout the month. Unfortunately for AP African American Studies students in high schools, this year's Black History Month has been marred by the threat of censorship by Florida's governor, Ron DeSantis. And when he threatened, the College Board removed content from their AP African American Studies course, content from multiple authors, particularly because DeSantis had targeted them, LGBT content. When DeSantis was in Congress, he wrote a bill to ban Muslims from entering the U.S. That bill was the template for Trump's Muslim ban. As governor, DeSantis went after LGBT content. Then when he went after African American content. And in the meantime, his lackeys started a group called Moms for Liberty. Moms for Liberty pushed book bans all over the country. And Dearborn's book banners got their book list from that group. They didn't come up with the list by themselves. They admitted when they were interviewed by Vice News that they only read snippets. They didn't even read the books. That's what this board is so afraid of. Do you want the fascist governor of Florida and his cronies to decide whether or not students in Dearborn get to enjoy their constitutional rights? Look up Island Trees School District v. Pico, where the Supreme Court decided that students in high school have a right to receive speech and that it is unconstitutional for school boards to ban books. They can't even be bothered to read the books that they want to ban. And you let them intimidate you into banning some books? Is this board content with only ever being remembered for their cowardice? You know, I have ancestors who fought in the US Civil War. They fought and died to end slavery in this country. They fought for a future where everyone could enjoy freedom of speech. They fought against southern states like Florida, which denied humanity to anyone who wasn't an adult Christian white man. This country ended slavery and ended Jim Crow, but the struggle for equality and justice is far from over. And if those of us in Dearborn can't unite against men like DeSantis, who want to destroy us all, then none of us will be safe. Dearborn deserves better than this. Let's confront Dearborn's racist history and recognize that diversity is our greatest strength.
Thank you.
Next, Dr. Adit Mosip would like to come to speak to the board about inequity in DPS from Dearborn.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity. So today we heard from the superintendent the commitments to diversity, equity, and inclusion from the district. I want to put two examples and ask, where is equity in these two examples? First example is investments in infrastructure. As one of the speakers mentioned, we went to Fort Sin, listened to this exercise that you're investing hundreds of thousands of dollars in, that's going to be worthless at the end because the community is not trusting you with the money. There will not be a bond, so I'm not sure where you're investing money. When there is money to be invested, you did not listen to the community. You did not solicit any feedback. You just went and invested. You just put $100 million into the buildings. So I'm going to pass this. This is from your website. And I ask you to look what these schools located at, east versus west, and see where the money went into. Because when I looked at it, I was stunned to realize where the money went in. Try to figure out the reasons that what listed on the website, try to understand those reasons. Did they just funded elementary schools? Because that could be a vision of just to make sure air-conditioned schools with elementary schools. Or there are two schools in the East End. McDonald's received $24,000. Mabel's received $24,000 only out of this $100 million. And McDonald's received zero. An elementary school receiving zero, while other elementary schools receiving $6 and $7 million. Salina is listed, Salina Intermediate is listed as fully air-conditioned, which is not the case. I hope you can go back and ask the questions. The other inequality that I would like to raise and ask the board, that's something that we have raised for years, is the participation of students in after-school programs, especially at Edsel Ford High School. Go walk during the day in the school and go walk during the afternoon and see who participate in the school after schools. Many Arab American students, majority of them do not participate in after-school programs. Most of them get bused to the school and they don't enjoy the after-school programs. When we ask many questions and we raise these issues many times to administrators, I'll leave you to ask, because if you think about transportation, it's not the issue because there's bus that leaves after school. If you think the students don't want to participate, because that would be the claim that you would get. A couple of you were at Salina celebrating the champions volleyball team that win. And it's not the first team that win champions in Salina. There are many champions from that school, but they don't get the opportunity. The one that try to get the opportunity, they get benched throughout the season, just like the football player that got into the team. One Arab American player. So I hope you live up to your promises about equity and diversity.
Thank you.
Next, Samra Lukman would like to come to speak to the board about several issues from Dearborn.
Hi, Samra Lookman. Dr. Maliko indicated that DPS leads the way in diversity, equity, inclusion. Several times it was mentioned. The agenda mentioned expressions of concerns for those in the Middle East, but you failed to show concern or commitment to diversity, equity, or inclusion to that same group of people within your Board of Education. I'm not going to remain respectful to those of you who have disrespected an entire community. Yes, you've disrespected an entire class of people that serve as the majority of DPS parents, 20,000 students. So to have Malibu Barbie, the Wicked Witch of the West, and a guy who uses board meetings as nap time conspire with the former board president to use Mr. Thorpe, who I have high regard and respect for. You used him. You threw him under the bus so that you can send a message to Mr. Mu'azzeb that you reign supreme, that he needs to bow down to your majority. Let's cut the BS out for now. You have never raised the concerns you raised to any other candidate for board president in recent history, ever. So forgive me if I call a spade and tell you that your actions are apparently and inherently and blatantly racist. This is what we talk about when we say systemic racism. You guys don't even realize that you're doing it when you're doing it. And you don't realize when you're allocating budgets in the millions exclusively towards one side of town, how it is racist. And the bottom line is that what you did was shameful and disgusting. I'm disgusted by your actions, absolutely disgusted. We tell our kids to be kind, to get along. We tell our school personnel to set an example for our children. Explain to me the example you're choosing to set when you interrupt each other incessantly, when you're bullying each other, when you're constantly correcting the pronunciation of someone who speaks like more parents in this district than you do, or when you disrespect one another and in front of each other's children. How dare you put your personal feelings above the greater good? How dare you allow your ego to lead? How dare you create the divisiveness and image of exclusion when you are supposed to be leading in diversity and inclusion? How dare you purport to be a leader, a representative of the people, when you've allowed your personal grievances to lead? How are you supposed to address the racism that this poor mother complained to you about when some of you on the highest level don't even realize that you're doing it yourselves? Shame on you. You should be ashamed of yourselves and your actions. I'm embarrassed for you. Keep your beef out of my school district, out of my child's school district. Do better, for crying out loud. Grow up.
Thank you.
So 2 additional blue cards came through, but it was after the time, so I will read their comments. America Yaya would like, she did not want to, well, this is her paper. I am writing in support and solidarity with Mr. Adil Mosip in regards to what occurred in the organizational meeting earlier this year. It was not only wrong and disrespectful to him, but to the entire Middle Eastern community. The same Arab American community that has been wronged, insulted, and banned from opportunities within the district for decades. As a board, you all need to admit the fault that was committed against Adil. He was stripped of his presidency, and it is a slap in the face to the entire community. Let's not forget all of the efforts and impacts the Middle Eastern community has had on Dearborn and the school district. It is Adil's turn for presidency, and the blatant racism of this board is evident. The current president must step down, and Adil should be leading at this time. And then the last one was from Ms. Mona Mari. She said, I do not wish to speak to the board, but would like to make the following comment. I'm disappointed in the board's actions in one of their previous meetings. Adil Mosip should have and should be president right now.
Thank you.